Good evening. When I worked at a factory here in my town, I had to wake up very early to get to work on time. I walked a long way to reach the bus station, which was where I would see a few people at that early hour of the morning. My town is small, and at that time, it had even fewer houses. I wasn't afraid to make that journey, as I've never been the fearful type. But that month, things changed a little. One morning, I left for work, as I always did, and walked calmly along the side of the road, looking at the undergrowth that was there. Nowadays, these thickets no longer exist because houses have been built and the town has grown a lot. I was walking lost in thought when I felt an urge to look ahead. When I raised my head, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The lighting was very poor, as most of the streetlights were off rather than on. Most of the way was in darkness, and the few lights that were there were mostly faulty or broken. That's when I saw that shadowy figure and stopped instantly, wondering what it could be. It looked like a huge dog in the middle of the road. I stayed in my corner, staring at that thing, trying to understand what was happening. The animal seemed to have come out of an alley that was a little further ahead and was standing in the middle of the road. It was a creature that looked like a black dog, but it was very large, almost the size of an adult donkey. The urge that came over me was to run away from there, but my legs refused to obey. That creature didn't see me because it was some distance away and was walking along the edge of the dark road. I only saw it because of the light coming from the window of a house whose lamp was on. I was very scared at that moment. Suddenly, in a brief moment of distraction, that creature had vanished without leaving any trace. It was very quick. I became even more apprehensive as I didn't know where it had gone. I thought that beast had seen me and was going to ambush me at any moment on that road. However, where I was, I remained until I was convinced that there was no more danger. After some time, I decided to leave there and go to work. I spent the whole day pondering what that apparition in the early morning could have been. When I got home, I talked to my wife and she was very afraid of the path I took at night, but I had to go to work as that was the only job available at the time. The following night, I went to work with even more fear of encountering that thing on the road. When I arrived at the same spot as the previous night, I got another shock. Right in the corner of the alley was a hunched figure that I couldn't identify at first. I turned pale where I stood, watching what it could be and didn't dare move. Immerse. After a while of staring at it, I saw a small light ignite as if it were fire and quickly go out. Friends, that was another fright I experienced. It looked like fire and smoke coming out of that thing's mouth. However, the figure stood up and spoke to me, greeting me with a somewhat hoarse voice. Actually, this time it was a resident of the alley that I had seen crouching on the road. It was an old man smoking a cigarette at that early hour of the morning, right in the path I was taking. I greeted him back and continued on my way without paying him much attention. That path was scaring me so much that I was already thinking about taking another one, even if it meant walking further and taking longer to get to work. That week, I talked to some people who told me that what I had seen was actually a werewolf. When I heard that, I asked what it was, as I had never heard of it before. I ended up finding out that in that alley lived an old man who everyone said turned into a beast that looked like a dog. They said he ate raw meat and avoided going out. During the day, the thing was so macabre that I almost quit my job just to avoid having to leave home at night anymore. This old man used to spend days in the woods, and they said they had heard him eating a whole raw chicken. Whoever said that gave details of where they saw him, and they were sure he was the werewolf. It was a spell he cast to transform into that, and there was a kind of prayer that gave him that ability. I heard many things I didn't know and learned a little about what happened at night. That old man I saw crouching was precisely the old man they said was the werewolf. I encountered him in both his forms within the same week and almost went crazy, wondering how I would avoid meeting him again. There was a longer path that would triple my walk, and I would have to wake up even earlier to take it. I calculated how I would do it, and the following week, I didn't go down that cursed path. The problem was that I was exhausted from walking too much and waking up very early, and to be honest, it didn't help much, as I ended up running into that beast again the following month. The new route I was taking led me past the city dump. It was very unpleasant. I smelled that stench of rotten things for several meters until I reached the curve that led to the highway. That new alternative was tough. I couldn't take it anymore, and even thought about going back to my old path until something happened that made me give up. One of those mornings, as I was arriving at the said dump, I was no longer smelling that usual stench of rot. I was walking calmly, looking at that mountain of garbage, when I got a huge fright. In front of me, I heard a strange noise, and when I looked, it was that huge dog in front of me. The animal seemed to be carrying the carcass of some creature, already in an advanced state of decomposition. My legs gave out again, and I almost died of a heart attack seeing that. The beast dragged that huge carcass as if it were very light, and quickly took it to the other side. I barely had time to react and think about running as the beast vanished from my sight like that filth. Even so, when I recovered, I ran home and waited for daybreak. My wife saw my state and believed what I told her. My work colleagues said I was going crazy, but I asked my supervisor to change my shift. I didn't know what to do anymore, and I couldn't even leave home before the sun was shining in the sky. After much insistence, my boss changed my schedule, and I didn't see that beast on my way anymore. I found out years later that that old man had passed away, and I haven't heard any more reports of sightings of that creature. I'm sure that the first time I encountered that thing, it saw me but didn't want to attack me. I think that because the next day, the old man waited for me on the path to find out who I was. I thank God that he didn't do anything to me, because given the size of that beast, I wouldn't have had a chance. I still don't understand much about these things, but I know I was very lucky to have crossed paths with that animal so many times and still survived to tell my story. Good night.